we got about 5.3 million, I think, 5.39 million. And yes, ma'am.
Ask anyone who is online to please mute, if you're not talking, to mute your button. I've forgotten the word, so that we don't get any background noise. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt you.
So the library fund has the revenue this year of an additional 5.39 million, which is an advance from the San Mateo County Library System, JPA, in a negotiated agreement between the town and the JPA for the town center project. And so over the next few years, we'll be paying that back pursuant to that agreement with the surplus funds that are going to come in each year. And the expenditures in the library are anticipated to be slightly higher than they were in the past. As we move into our new facility in particular this new fiscal year. And those will even out over time as we realize what the actual ebb and flow of those expenditures are going to be. But they're the same things. They're the library operational costs, maintenance, custodial services, and things like that the town pays out of its share. And then once we have paid back the 5.39 million pursuant to the agreement, the library operational costs and the town's costs associated with the library for any programs and activities and services that we have related to the library services are taken out first, and then the surplus is split 50-50 between the town and the county. It's anticipated that that could be about 3 to 4 years out, but it really depends on the property tax revenue that comes into that particular fund. Then we have the other restricted funds. The main one there is the equipment replacement fund. That's where we have an internal depreciation fund for major assets that the town uses, such as vehicles, computer equipment, software trailers, emergency equipment. We take out and depreciate assets over time. That money from each department goes into the equipment replacement fund. So when we need to purchase a new vehicle or purchase a large asset, we can draw it out of that fund instead of a large single year purchase. So you have a list of some of the things that you've already seen that are part of the police department's equipment replacement portion. That's the defense tactics, gear, Narcan, and things like that. Those were part of the police department's budget you saw at the last study session. And this is basically an in and out fund. It's an internal service fund. The workers' compensation fund is a very similar fund. This is a self-insurance risk pool, the city's group joint powers authority for the town. Each department is again charged an allocation against their operational costs based on the number and type of personnel. The cost for an admin person is different in terms of the liability and exposure than it is for a public works employee or a police officer. So the asset charge is different to each department that then the assessed charge is different to each department that then goes into this fund. And then we pay for our insurance through the city's group joint powers authority. It's an in and out fund as well. The next in and out is our general liability fund. This is general liability claims and property losses. This is basically the trip and fall, the tree failures, the things that go on out in the community to the general public. We are part of an insurance pool administered by Plan JPA. Again, each department is charged, and then we pay our insurance costs as part of our self-insurance. We have a retention amount of $100,000 that we have to retain in that fund as well. And that, in our estimation, we typically pay for 3 to 4 claims a year. We don't usually have that, but it's a self-insurance requirement. The next major in and out fund, internal service fund, is our employee benefits fund. Again, this is charges across each department based on the benefits received in each department, vacation, sick, holiday, etc. All of those accruals have to be accounted for. So the employee benefits fund does that. And then we pay, the risk. We pay the pension costs, we pay the retiree health care, we pay as you go health care. Those all come out of that employee benefits fund account. The last one is our tennis, the second to last one is our tennis fund. That has a revenue projected of about $58,900. The primary source of that is our agreement with Player Capital. They provide about $40,000 a year. And our anticipation this year is we're going to rehab about 3 courts. So in addition to the key revenue, the Player Capital provides the bulk of the revenue there. The COPS, Citizens Options for Public Safety, is a grant of 155,000. It's required to be in its own separate fund. It can only pay for frontline law enforcement personnel or equipment. We use it for sworn personnel salary related expenses. That basically is one officer out of the numerous officers that we have in town in our police force. Those are the basic funds. I'm going to stop there before we go into the CIP, and Robert Barone is on the line as well. He can answer any specific questions the council may have with respect to the special funds before we move into the capital improvement phase.
I'll unmute myself. Thank you, City Manager. That was very
high level.
Yes, high level. Does any member of the council have a question and want to ask City Manager about this presentation at this point? I know I had many questions and I talked through them with him earlier in the week, so I am satisfied with the answers that he gave me. Anybody else? Seeing none, I'll open it up to the public. Does any member of the public have a question or comment on George's presentation of the special funds? Okay, seeing none, bring it back to council. Anybody want to make a comment or statement? Okay, George, I think you let's roll into the CIP.
I have a question actually.
Okay, Rick, I don't see you anymore. You've gone black. Blank. There you are.
George, in the discussion of the library fund, it was a little bit confusing, the numbers to me, because at the end of the revenue discussion, it said that the estimated available funding for 21-22 was $6,289,000 and some odd dollars. But I thought that it said that, it said the town holds $9,125,000. So I take it that there is, a little less than $3 million that the town holds that aren't available. Because that's the difference between the 9 million and the 6 million number. And I don't understand what that is.
Correct. The cash on hand is about 9.1 million. Through the end of the fiscal year, we will have about 6.2 million. And that's just anticipating the remainder portion of the pay app applications for the next couple of months. So the flow through at the end of fiscal year 2021 will be about 6.2 million available funding for the remainder of the project entering into our fiscal year 21-22.
So it's
which we estimate about. It's a timing, correct. And we estimate about 4.3 million in expenditures to finish out the library project in fiscal year 21-22.
Yeah, so that raises another question, which is, since there's 6.3 million approximately available for the next fiscal year, and it's anticipated that we'll use 4.3 million, that says that there would be $2 million of excess. I assume that'll be used to pay down the advancement number.
That's correct.
It could. Correct. And then also if there's any, and I don't foresee it, or we don't foresee it, if there's any other contingency on the project,
that would be
that would help also as well. Correct.
Oh, if you mean that those numbers assume the application of 100% of the contingencies?
What we currently have right now, what we know in the cost estimate of the project.
Well, wait,
right now,
that's not clear. The contingency set aside is a relatively large number to what we know we're going to have to spend. So
correct.
If in fact we spend less than the contingency set aside, would we have more than 2 million to pay down the advancement?
No, That 2 million is the contingency. We estimated about 1.8 million. So that's part of the contingency component if we have to use it.
So the
Yeah,
2 million assumes we're not, that assumes surplus from the contingency that we don't already have
Correct.
committed.
Correct.
Councilmember DeGoli, let me drill down on that one just a little bit, if you could.
Okay.
Robert, the $4.1 million that is in the budget for the library expenditures for the town center project. That includes what our estimate is for the construction portion of the work that remains, plus our estimation of the contingency portion of the library project, plus the project management costs. Is that correct?
Correct. The current contingency portion.
So what Councilmember DeGoli
yes,
is
that's
asking
part of
is, if we don't spend the entirety of the project's contingency that is allocated to the library, the $2 million surplus that's projected at the end of the year could actually be more.
It could. Yes, it could be more
Is that
than
answer your question?
the 2 million.
That's
Yeah.
good. So, okay, that sounds fine. I mean, I also am aware that the projection is that there'll be a $1.5 million surplus over the current fiscal year ending June 30. And given the lack of operations that have occurred, that surplus may be more, that excess tax dollar amount may be more than the $1.5 million. So the number could go up further. So we'll just have to wait and see once everything shakes out.
Right.
Okay. I want to welcome our council member Widmer to the meeting. Nice to see you, Council Member Widmer. We are into item number 3 and just went through the special funds. City manager gave a very high level overview of the special funds. We haven't gotten into the CIPs yet. So
Okay, great. Yeah, on the other funds, I've gone over with George and I'm satisfied with where we are on that.
Great.
So
great,
thank
thank you. I kind of said the same thing. Following up, Rick, a little bit on the library and the future of the excess donor funds that would flow back to the town from operations. We've always felt that was kind of a large number, and so to the extent that we can use that for library services, library purposes, and other things. Have we been talking, since you're on the library JPA as the liaison, is there any plans in the works for expanded programs or things that will, that we can fund having to do with the library and throughout the community?
Well, the staff report indicates that there's expected increased obligations on our part related to facility maintenance and some of the operational materials, and there are likely to be additional library employees, although I haven't seen a presentation from the library on their expectation on that yet. But once we have the new library, there will be some additional costs, particularly related to facility management and landscaping. I think it's quite clear there'll be additional costs in those areas. They will not materially change the excess library taxes. And of course, there will be no excess library taxes for the first few years, because 100% of any library taxes that aren't used for operational purposes will go to pay down the advancement. And that will take probably 3 years to pay off. And then your question is particularly relevant. And I've tried to explore this with both the council and Atherton residents on many, many occasions, and there've never been any brilliant suggestions that would eat into those funds. in any material way, other than, of course, building the new library, which is using those funds 100%. But no, that's an area of exploration, and as a practical matter, we have 3 years to come up with a game plan, because those excess funds are going to be used to pay down the advancement that's occurred over those 3 years. But I think it behooves us to be as creative and innovative in exploring options as possible. I had suggested that we seriously develop the computer center that will be in the library next to, there's a big internal room in the library that could be used for all kinds of technology network enhancement and exploration by library users and students. But a program has never been really developed that would take advantage of that.
Well,
The-
yeah.
So we do have, we're going to have, with the new library, we're absolutely going to have more options because of both the computer center area and the makerspace to come up with creative ideas about how we could use those excess library taxes. That means we will have more tools at hand to use those funds than we have had in the past, but there's not a game plan in place. In fact, there hasn't even been a serious discussion about a game plan to date.
Okay. Well, again, I think we've got, a couple years at least to really start thinking about it and figuring out how the library works, and, just really exploring all that. And who knows what kind of technology is going to be developed over the next 3 years.
That's right.
Something that's completely. Councilmember Widmer, yes, hi, join us.
Yes, hi. As a follow-on to your question, which was a great one, and to Rick, we're spending money in the Makers Lab, and there was discussion when we were talking about building it and how large it had to be and things like that, that there were going to be all these projects and things like that. So I would hope that when we open the new library and we have all the equipment in there, there is a plan to at least get people moving on that and understanding how the equipment's going to work, and actually have some programs to start utilizing that equipment. And so, we wouldn't want to wait 3 years for that, because we've invested in it now.
That's right. I think it's an extremely good area of inquiry. I would suggest, and I'm happy to take the lead on this, I would suggest that we ask library staff to make a presentation to the council about how they expect to utilize the new spacing, particularly the computer lab area and the makerspace, so that they can give the council some idea, and maybe it will generate some creative ideas about how we could think about, developing initiatives to use those funds.
Yeah, great idea. Great idea.
Any other council member want to weigh in on this topic? Any member of the public? Okay, so I'm going to bring it back and toss it back over to City Manager Rodrigues to talk about CIP, or maybe.
Before we go on to CIP, could I ask a question about the equipment replacement fund?
I thought.
No, we were just talking about the library fund, but I have sort of two questions that I wasn't able to explore ahead of time like you and Councilmember Widmer were. I'll just state both the questions. They're unrelated, but they both deal with this fund. The first question is, I see that we have a $2,500 amount allocated for the purchase of Narcan because a current order expires in September. And I just wondered, do we buy an amount of this product every year? I mean, is this an annual thing, or is this just to replace something that's expiring? That's question number one. And question number two is, we have referenced, actually, I guess I have three questions. We have referenced a $5,000 LiDAR gun, which I'm sure the other council members know now what it is because they had the opportunity to talk to you about that, but I don't. So if you could explain what the LiDAR gun is, a $5,000 piece of equipment sounds slightly expensive. And then I note that we have $17,000 for printers. And as printer costs have gone down, which we all experience as we buy our own personal replacement printers, $17,000 sounds like a lot for printers these days, but maybe there's something special. I just don't know.
Type of printer.
Sure, I can take the high level part of it. The LiDAR, and the chief's on the line as well. The LiDAR is their speed radar gun that officers use. And the Narcan is an expiring item that when it expires, we replenish it within the backs of all the police cars. It only has an expiration date for its use. It's a chemical, so it expires and we have to replace it.
No, but my question is that an annual item or does that?
It varies based on when the article expires. So it may be a different amount each year.
I see.
And then the 17,000 in printers, Robert Barone can probably expand on that as well. But in terms of the cost of printers, we have different types of printers. We don't have the small home office types. I've got one in my office, but not all staff do. We have large format printers within the building and planning departments to print out plans and other things. And then we also have the big copy machine printers that we use that are shared by multiple staff. So office printers are a little more expensive than the home version, but Robert can articulate some more detail.
Thanks, George. Yeah, these eSight printers, they're basically printers that will be with the police officers.
Oh, you mean the eSight ones?
So,
Yeah,
Oh,
that's what is
correct. That's what those are. Yeah,
sorry. Yeah,
eSight
sorry.
printers, right?
Different than the office ones.
That's
Sorry,
what those
eSight
are.
ones.
Correct.
Handheld
Correct.
tickets.
Correct.
Can I ask a
You get your
follow-on
ticket
question?
instantly.
I think it's your turn now. Councilmember Whitmer.
Yeah, George, you and I talked about using some of this fund for, of course, replenishing the equipment that's going in. One thing that I've thought about since our discussion is we are replacing the radios in the cars, and that's equipment replacement. Can't we use this replacement fund to fund that as opposed to having it be a new capital expenditure?
Are you talking about the
The
technology
encrypted radios.
for the encrypted radios? Robert, where is that funding expenditure coming from for the multi-year replacement of the radios? Is it out of this fund?
Those will be, depends on the value of the encryption, the radios, but we can bring those out of the equipment replacement fund or depends on if it would be the operation fund. But the encryption, I believe we'll bring it out of the equipment replacement fund.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
those are accounted for assets that depreciate. So-
Okay, great, great, thanks.
Correct.
Okay, ready to go on to the CIP fund?
All right, the CIP fund, as you know, there's two big components of that. That's the library and the town center. And so those will complete out and they're budgeted each about 4.1 million and 3.9 million within the capital improvement fund. So we are now able to start adding in some smaller projects. The major project is the park circulation project. That one's in there and the council is well aware of what that one is. And then we have two other areas that we've added a few projects in that we need some input from the council. One is in the neighborhood traffic safety and neighborhood traffic management program. There's $160,000 in that allocation, and that is to begin putting some things on the ground, pilot projects and such in neighborhoods that'll come out of the neighborhood traffic management process that we're engaged in right now, getting feedback. So these could be stop signs, little circulation traffic control devices, or speed humps, and hopefully we can do some of that this coming fiscal year. There is also the Civic Center Master Plan includes $400,000 that we're going to be getting from Caltrain for the train station. And at your next council meeting, I believe the Legends Council Subcommittee is going to be making a presentation on that program. So feedback from that subcommittee will help inform the council's decision as to what we're going to spend that $400,000 on within the train station. And that's the high level summary. Robert Ovadia does have a PowerPoint presentation, or we can just go straight to questions on any specific CIP area. And as you go through there, it's helpful if you can identify what the CIP number is, and we can go right to that in our staff report.
Any objections? Let's see. I'd like to see Robert Avadia's PowerPoint presentation. I understand it's about 150 slides. Is that, did you?
It is.
Yeah. Robert Barone helped him, I think.
Lots of graphs, charts.
Lots of graphs.
Well, Robert is always very helpful, so I do appreciate it. You know, but it's hard to measure up to the master.
Okay. So, you know, Robert, you're going to have to speak up. And I think that Mr. DeGoya, Councilmember DeGoya, has raised his hand. Does he want to say something before we go into that?
Well, I have a question.
He has a question.
My question, and I'm trying to figure out where this is, because looking at both the staff report and this PowerPoint, it's not
Well,
easy to
If it's
follow
about
the
his
relationship.
PowerPoint, why
but
don't you let him do the PowerPoint and we'll ask questions for that?
I'll just deal with it later.
Is that
That
okay?
might be easy. Yeah. Go ahead, Robert.
Okay, well, thank you. So we're going over the capital improvement program for 2021-22 in particular, but in the budget document, we put in a forecast for the next few years. And so we identify some project needs and related to construction, improvement, and maintenance. This is just a planning tool to identify needs, but the CIP in and of itself does not appropriate any funds. The funding is only appropriated as you adopt the annual budget each year. Next slide. So what we have,
Robert, I didn't get these charts. Were these charts sent out earlier?
the PowerPoint, I think, was
That
emailed.
went out today. It's what's in the staff report.
Oh, so we're just going to be going through the staff report.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Because, you know, I've been busy all day, so I'm
Well,
sorry.
I didn't have a chance to print them out either. So this is the first time seeing them also.
Okay, all of the information that's in the slide deck are in the CIP, in the proposed CIP. And so what we have in terms of revenue sources for the CIP include obviously general funds, which are predominantly used for the capital improvement program fund and the facility replacement fund dedicated towards the town center. We have the Atherton Library. We have some gas tax funds, remaining special parcel tax funds, Measure A, Measure M, and Measure W funds, which are geared towards transportation. And then we have the limited amount of funds that we get from the Atherton Channel District. All comprised in terms of new revenue, we're looking at about $10.55 million. Next slide. We do have a slightly higher on the expenditure side, and that's related to some of the special parcel tax money. That's not exactly revenue. It's not revenue that's coming in. It's funds that are on balance, as well as capital improvement funds and some grants that we are anticipating to start getting receipt of. And predominantly those are related to the park circulation. We have the $300,000 grant from Santa Clara County from Stanford Mitigation that is geared towards the circulation project. And then we are working on allocating the per capita parks grant, and that'll likely be added also into the circulation project to help with funding. Our most significant expenditures are related to the town center and library, as George indicated. Our next category is drainage projects, and the predominant item in that is the $1.35 million that we are committed to for the Bayfront Canal project, which was just awarded by the district. Those funds are basically in and out of on the CIP as we are borrowing the revenue to expend it. And the remaining balance are geared towards minor projects, including a pilot GI project. The park master plan project that we have on this year is the park circulation element, which is under design, and funds for roadway maintenance. Next slide, please. So again, on the high level, the Civic Center and Library is the major expenditure in the CIP, and it is anticipated to be completed this year. Next slide. So with regards to roadway improvements, we typically do 3 types of treatments each year. And that includes dig out and pavement repairs, a slurry seal project, which provides a maintenance coat on the roadways, as well as the 2-inch grind and overlay. Next slide. And so these are images of the Bayfront Canal area, where we, again, are borrowing the $1.35 million for our obligation. And so this exhibit shows the outline of where the improvements are located down at the tail end of the Atherton Channel, where it meets the Bayfront Canal and dumps into Flood Slough. And the diversion will bring the combined flows when the tide gates are closed over into the managed storage ponds that are owned and managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Project kickoff is actually happening this week. So again, the Flood and Sea Level Rise District awarded the construction contract earlier this month, and looking forward to getting that project underway. Next slide.
Robert,
Yes.
I think Council Member Widmer has raised his hand. Do you want to take questions as you go along, or shall we wait until?
I'm happy to take questions anytime you want to give them.
Councilmember Widmer, would you like to ask a question about something that was just on the slide?
Right, that's correct. So this drainage improvements, of course, is associated to that little document that we got in our pack. And it showed, of course, your expenditures for this year, which I understand were cash strapped this year and next year. But there is a substantial amount of things like, for example, El Camino, the flooding on El Camino that's been going on for years. We need to do something about that. And I don't really see a substantial amount of money in the out years. And so I just am concerned that we're just moving down. I'd be more interested in actually seeing some things called out for 2024, 2025 timeframe. In many of these cases, I have the same comment. Realize we don't have the money now, but we do have other projects that are needy. So just keeping it on this, the El Camino project, we need to do something there. So,
okay.
So I say to you, and I say to my colleagues, that I think we need to amend this 5-year plan that we've got here, and at least put some other things on there that we identified, because we spent a lot of money doing a drainage master plan, and we're not doing much about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Your comment was not specifically about this Bayfront Canal project.
Well, it was on drainage improvements.
Category. That's fine.
But my comment is specific about that I tried to ask before, and I.
Why don't you go ahead and ask that now, sir?
Okay, so the drainage improvement project for 21-22 includes $1.35 million for the Bayfront Canal. And is that that's an expense. I understand that, but let me clarify it. Is that 1.35 million coming from the county, or is that coming from, what is the revenue source for that one?
That'll be the lease back agreement that we have with the county.
I see. Okay.
Okay, Robert, continue, please.
Sure. Next. Next slide, please, Anthony. And so the next program is the Park Improvement Program. This here is a image conceptually for the Park Circulation Project, which includes revamping the entry and exit drives, providing pedestrian access into the park, reconfiguring some of the pedestrian paths, converting them over to decomposed granite, and that includes the elimination of the circular drive in front of the main house and turning that into more of a pedestrian pathway. What's not shown on here, obviously, is the additional landscaping that'll be included, and then a new pathway and accessible picnic area near the playgrounds.
Okay, Robert,
Yes.
interrupt you once more. Councilmember DeGoya would like to ask a question, and
Well, I can wait until you finish your presentation on this issue if you want, whatever is best for you, Robert.
Let me go through this real quick, and then I'm happy to answer questions once I
Right.
get through it. So our current estimate for the construction of this is just over $1 million, and that's what's being proposed in the budget for this year. And that includes the funds that we are anticipating from the Stanford Mitigation Fund, as well as I indicated before, the per capita parks grant from the State Parks Department. Looking forward, the two areas that were identified as next needs related to park improvements is doing parking lot repairs and seal coat, particularly with the fact that we've impacted the parking lot with our offices here in the parking lot, the temporary trailers, making sure that we're able to patch up deficient areas in the parking lot and do the seal coat and restriping. And then also looking forward is replacement of the fencing along Watkins from the existing chain link.
great, great. So Councilmember DeGoya, and then I see that Councilmember Widmer may have a question on the Park Improvements Program.
On this chart specifically.
Okay, Councilmember DeGoya.
Okay, I have two different things. The first concerns the 21-22 capital improvement, which is the park circulation improvement. I understand that we're estimating that will be $1,050,000. I don't think Verde Design has given us a conceptual dollar amount yet. Where did the $1,050,000 come
This
from?
is actually, we've gotten their conceptual estimate, and that's what it's based on.
I see.
And there's going to be, there is ongoing discussion and further discussion to be had with the Park and Rec Committee to fine tune the various scope items of the project as well.
Okay, so it's possible it'll be more than that, but that's, and is that image that was included in the staff report from their conceptual whatever data that they provided to you?
Yeah, this is a recent image of the conceptual layout, and I believe it's going to be presented tonight at the Park and Rec Committee meeting.
So my question was, is this the latest and greatest circulation plan? Because, you know, it has changed periodically. And so I just like to kind of make sure that what we're looking at and what we're estimating on is something that is agreeable to our Park and Rec commissioners, as well as council members, and, you know, with, you know, public input too.
Okay, so this is the current layout of the concept. It doesn't show all of the elements that are included.
Mhm.
The Park and Rec Committee is involved regularly at this point, as we have started the project design.
Mhm.
And that includes discussions at the last Park and Rec meeting with regards to certain design elements and furnishings. And we'll continue actually in this evening's Park and Rec Committee as well, where there's going to be further discussion on the layout. Again, this is just a refined concept It's not the design plans which are currently under development.
It's
Councilmember Wick?
all.
Well,
have to
wait,
come to
I
council.
had a second question.
Go ahead.
And I can take it after Bill if Bill is specifically addressing the circulation plan. My second question's on a different issue related to the park.
No,
Okay.
let's have Bill talk about this one here.
Oh, okay, so on the exit, the fence that's there, I mentioned this to George, the fence that's there is the original fence from 1853. Are we going to do anything within this project to repair that? And then secondly, the plaza, I remember that when we looked at this, and this was like a year and a half ago, I don't recall that we approved putting the plaza in there. We said that the entrance, all the other things you've listed, the new sidewalk, et cetera, and an entrance there, that was necessary, but the fancy plaza,
What do you mean by the plaza?
well, it says
Oh,
right
at
there,
the-
that's a little area,
At
it says
the entry
plaza.
plaza, right.
Right, okay,
Yeah, you know,
that was
that's,
good.
that was what my question was about. Has this plan really been approved by, council? Because
No.
the detail,
No, it hasn't gone through to the council yet. It's got to go through its other processes before it gets to you,
got it.
this is the Park and Rec Committee. And once they've gone through their part of it, it'll make its way to the council for review and consideration and
Uh-huh.
change if you wish to. And I don't think the council, and I don't think the plaza, correct me if I'm wrong, Robert, is that large arch
No,
plaza entry that the council was talking about before. I think that was nixed. And I think that's what Councilmember Whitten was talking about.
no,
Maybe flat work.
what's shown there is flat work, in essence,
Yeah.
kind of a junction point for the different pathways. And it's, I think the comments that we got from the Park and Rec Committee, if I'm not mistaken, is kind of a red-brown brick in kind of a herringbone pattern for those plaza areas. Just for lack of a better way to put it, it's more of a on-the-ground focal point at the junction points there.
Yeah, if I can add to it, I mean, the word plaza is a little bit overstated. The other circular area that you see in the image, which is coming into the main house brick area right in front of the main house, between the main house and the event garden, that circle, it's a accent paving, and the proposal for the entry will be pretty similar to that. It's accent paving in a circular area that defines different pathways that come together. And at the entry, you can see, I think there's 5 different pathways that come together, 3 of which are yellow, 1 of which is white, and 1 of which is gray in the image in the staff report. But I don't think that it includes the large archway that had originally been included in the Verde design when we looked at it, whatever, 3 years ago or so. As George said, I think that was nixed. And I do believe that this proposal from Verde Design is going to deal with the issue of the fencing and at the entry, the gate, both of which are old. I don't know that they date back to 1850s, but they're old.
Well, Frank Merrill said that they're the original gate is on the exit is the original gate from 1850.
Well,
Yeah,
that-
so I think that proposal will deal with, I mean, they were charged with addressing that, and that had been discussed. Exactly what would happen was not discussed, but the desire to have them address that was discussed at the Park and Rec meeting.
So Councilmember Hawkins Manuelian has raised her hand. Do you have a question on this slide?
I do. Forgive me because I'm new to some of this, but do any of our long-term drainage or park plans have anything about water retention? We're about to go into drought. And I'm wondering if any of our park plans have allotted for water retention, storage of gray water for watering and things like that.
All of the water, I believe, is from well water. And there is a swale that was conceptualized, right?
in the amphitheater.
in
Right.
the, yeah, right, as a collector. Mhm.
Yeah, it gets full. It gets full during the rainy season.
Has the potential.
Not a
Okay,
bad-
There's no gray water system.
no,
There's no purple pipe that comes to this location, although that was discussed by Cal Water at one point, but it hasn't made its way down here. One of the other items with respect to these accent paving areas that I've heard rumblings of from either foundation members or Park and Rec members and others is much like we're selling bricks at the town center for City Hall, town center donations. There was an interest in brick selling and naming of bricks within the park for park fundraising efforts. And those accent plazas or accent points would be good places to do that.
yeah, there are bricks already with names out there.
Yeah.
Here and there and on, benches and stuff, so
Right.
there's, and there's plaques on trees and
Mhm.
things. So I think that's a great idea to the extent that people want to donate to the park and have their name put on a brick or someplace. I think it's a good idea. Yeah. Any other member of council have a comment or question for Robert at this time for this park improvement plan?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, Rick.
Okay, off the circulation plan, the staff report identifies projects planned for the future but not budgeted for at this time. And that includes signage for the park. I think it's a mistake to put the signage for the park off to the future. The Park and Rec Committee has established a subcommittee with a game plan to have a comprehensive proposal for signage change in the park by the end of this fiscal year. I assume that they're going to meet that goal, but if they don't, it could slip a month or so. But there is definitely effort that the Park and Rec Committee are putting in to address the confluence of many different signage styles in the park, which they're not happy with. And they're going to make a recommendation for a solution to that, which obviously has to come to the council. But I think that we should budget addressing that. It would make sense to do it in the next fiscal year, given that we're going to do this circulation plan. And it could be in 22, 23 if the council prefers. But given that we're doing the circulation plan, which will be the biggest project we have ever done in the park, it would make sense to have our signage improved. And there will be a recommendation because they put the effort into putting that together and the whole committee is going to recommend it. So I think we should move that. I think we should move it to next year, but we could move it to 22, 23 if the council.
I'd like to just make I'm going to say, unfortunately, we haven't received that recommendation to budget for it. So we're looking forward to that. I know that some of the items that have come out of the committee, we're trying to address some of the duplicative signage through our operating budget. So I'd say, as we see the recommendations coming forward and are able to aggregate those, we will certainly look at trying to find a way to budget. But I see city manager has his hand raised.
I was just gonna make that same point. I don't really see small scale signage replacement consistent with what the Park and Rec Committee is gonna come up with as a capital improvement. I would more see it in line with operational, and we can find funding within our operational budget as needed as those things move forward.
That's
Okay, well, I'm only responding to it because it's
Right.
referenced
I
yeah.
in
understand.
the staff report under planned projects,
Yeah, understood.
which would imply that it's designed for a future CIP.
Right.
Okay. Robert,
Okay.
do you have more slides to talk us through?
I think there's just a couple more.
Let's go.
Next. And so this is really where policy, this slide here is really intended to provide what we've been doing in terms of answering questions. But to get feedback, as the city manager indicated, with regards to policy areas related to the Atherton Station Building and its integration into the town, into the Civic Center, as well as we've put a placeholder for funding to get started on implementing some of the recommendations that will come out of the Neighborhood Traffic Management Action Plan, which we're currently seeking feedback from our residents on, and encourage you and everybody that is in town to participate in the effort in terms of providing comment on some of the proposed, I'm going to say, some of the potential mitigation measures. But what we would like to do is this coming year be able to fund implementation of some of those recommendations that come out through that plan.
Great, that sounds good. I see that Councilmember Widmer has raised his hand. Do you have a question or a comment on this?
Yes. So when I looked at what we're doing on the traffic management plan, because you had in the attachment, there was like a book and went through it. And there is $160,000, but then it tails off. And I just think that we make a plan and then we don't throw any money at it. It's the same with the bike plan. We're not putting any money into it. So, it's frustration for the residents to not at least see in the out years that we're planning and allocating money, or we're targeting money for doing that. So like I said before, I don't think we need to do everything now because we're going to be short on cash and we want to pay off the loan. But when it's just kind of like $10,000 in the future, we should be making plans forward. In the bike plan, you're not spending any money. Every bike lane, a street that's got a bike path on it should have one of those electronic signs you and I have talked about, Robert. And so I just think that we need to start doing some things. And if we can't do it this year because we're cash strapped, that's fine. But let's go ahead and put it down as an item to get fixed, like you've done on some other things, and put some money in the out year plan.
Thank you. I have a question about the Civic Center master plan, the Atherton Station Building integration. And this, I guess, is going to go to George. Is this, what is the scope of that you're talking about here? Because when you and I spoke, you said, well, it's really just the 400,000 or something that from our MOU with the Caltrain to spend to do something about integrating it.
Sorry about that.
Sorry, we should.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. I thought we were going to try to do something bigger and better with the station, historic station, and repurpose it to integrate it into the town center as some kind of a historic museum for the public to visit and to put, I don't know, there's the whole idea has yet to be fleshed out. So I think that forming some kind of a task force, a blue ribbon task force with residents who are interested in the building and the historic nature of it, and council members, is really kind of maybe the first step so that we can get input and ideas. Council Member Hawkins, Mary William, you raised your hand on this. You have a question?
Yes, we have a proposal for the legends, which is going to go in that station, and that's in the works. We're have a draft. It just hasn't come up for everyone to review yet. So
you're thinking that the station will just be the legends of Atherton and not have any other historical context about being like one of the first railroad stations on the line, and the importance of the history of Atherton that it all entails?
No, the proposal that's in draft form now includes the legends as only one part, but it has the history of the train station and the history of the town. So there's a proposal in the works that's going to come before you. George can tell when that's going to be on the calendar.
Ah,
Next meeting is my understanding.
That's correct. As soon as the subcommittee completes the draft proposal and sends it in, then we'll get that on the next agenda, which is currently scheduled for May 19th.
well,
So that will help the council flesh out what you want to do with that component of the station. And if you want to expand it or shrink it or add a resident-driven subcommittee in some way, you can certainly do that as a council. But that's when the discussion will be had.
my perspective or understanding of the legends, because we were first looking at it to go into the library, right? And understand that the rooms aren't really designed to do that, that could be part of it, but not everything. So I'll be surprised. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you. Anybody else have a comment or question about this at this time? Any member of the public? I think we may have lost all. Oh, Mr. Polito is still with us. Do you have any comments or questions about the capital improvement program?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to make sure we have an opportunity. George?
And so just then in wrapping up, there's one, we appreciate all the feedback in the comments. There's one that Councilmember Whitmer brought up about increasing the amount of out-year projections for different areas of the capital improvement program. I think that's an important conversation that the council needs to have. And tomorrow we have our goal setting meeting where we can talk about that probably in greater detail on how to do that, because there's a couple of issues that the council's brought up in the past about doing that. One is sometimes you don't want to give the residents the perspective that we are budgeting for X, Y, and Z project, and then X, Y, and Z project doesn't actually happen. And then there's a kind of a backlash about that. So there's hesitation in doing it that way, and that's come from some council perspective. And then the other component of it is, if we put it into our CIP, it's going to be very important for us to recognize where that funding has to come from. And a lot of times that's going to have to come from the general fund. So it's going to draw down the general fund in terms of a transfer over to the CIP in order to pay for those programs or project those programs or projects. And that's where Robert's 5-year projection in the general fund outlay, the council will get a bigger picture for what the impact is. So that's a bigger, deeper conversation. And I think we can have some of that tomorrow at our goals meeting.
Okay. Any further comment on this item of the agenda? If not, we'll close the discussion on item 4 and move on to item number 5, which has to do with the grand jury report on cybersecurity. George?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I do not have an executive summary for this one, although I love IT, and I'm sure there's members of the council that love IT as well. We do have a couple of folks on the line, one of which is our city clerk, Anthony Zuber, and the other is Mohammed from Interwest, who will be giving this presentation.
Okay.
Thank
Anthony?
you, City Manager Roderick. So I'll introduce this, and then if you guys have some specific technical questions, Mohammed's on the line to join. This is just an informational report and a required step in the grand jury report that you guys had already approved a response letter back in December 2020. So some of the suggestions and recommendations that came out of that report are addressed in the staff report, and they include a coordination with some federal agencies like the Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity, Infrastructure Security Agency. So our department, our IT department, already has included some of these routine like cyber hygiene assessments. We've done some partnerships with agencies similar to that one, and we're actually going to be implementing a software in the coming fiscal budget year to do some additional cybersecurity related mitigation measures and routine screenings. And so that's called Managed Detection and Response Software. Mohammed can talk a little bit more about how it's performed technically, but essentially it's going to be software that routinely looks for intrusions and detects malware and malicious activity within our network. And then it's also combined with outside security analysts who will kind of be reviewing some of those things on a regular basis. The report goes on to kind of introduce you to some topics and terms that most of us are pretty familiar with at this stage, like what is cybersecurity, what are cyber attacks, what's phishing, so on and so forth. And then it also addresses kind of a general approach to how we look at cybersecurity for the town. So there are, again, other federal agencies that RIT and many local municipalities base their cybersecurity programs on. The Center for Internet Security is a nonprofit organization that we use, private industry uses as well, and they identify a variety of different controls that serve as a framework for cybersecurity. In the staff report, I only listed the basic ones just as an introduction to this topic, and there's 6 of them that are identified. If you have any questions about the specifics of those, I'm happy to talk about it, but essentially we try to address how those 6 framework controls are included in the town cybersecurity program. And then lastly, kind of one of the cornerstones of cybersecurity is our frontline defense, and that's really our staff and consultants and team members. And so we do routinely do cybersecurity trainings. We've conducted one this year. We'll conduct one last year. We save those and record those videos because now we're in this virtual world, and we make them available to staff at their leisure. Mohammed has indicated that in other jurisdictions he services, they do that twice a year. So we've decided that we're going to do the same thing, and we'll be offering another cybersecurity training later in the year, and obviously the council are welcome to join and participate in those. So that's kind of like again a high level 2-minute drill for you with the staff report. I'm happy to talk in more detail if you'd like, and again, Mohammed is available if you guys have some specific questions that you'd like answered.
Thank you, Anthony. Well, I must admit, a lot of this goes like this over my head, but I just hate it if I feel like I'm going to be hacked, and I'm always kind of feeling that we're all at risk at some point. And to the extent that you can keep us secured from, cyber attacks, I commend you all. Will this report satisfy the grand jury?
Yes, so we've already prepared the response. Again, that was done in December 2020. This is one of the recommended steps that the grand jury suggested our IT department and other IT departments do in bringing some information back to the council about our program, how we mitigate these risks, and making sure that we're partnering with some of these federal national agencies to kind of actively evaluate and improve what we do with cybersecurity.
Thank you. I'll open it up to all the other council members if you have a question or comment at this time for Anthony or Mohammed. Councilmember Widmer?
Sure. Mohammed, obviously you're supporting quite a number of other facilities. So what type of, edge computing and what type of firewalls do you have that separates us and differentiates our servers or the access to our servers from the other communities?
Thank you for the question. Great question. So one of the things we try to do is we make sure that the devices and hardware that you have is in conjunction with enterprise grade. And sometimes what we've seen is a lot of these hardwares, they have an end of life cycle, usually anywhere from 3 to 5 years, depending on how long you've had this product for. So in the case of the town of Atherton, we've actually are in the process of upgrading the firewall right now as we move into the new town civic center. So we are actually getting a high level grade firewall in conjunction with this new MDR software that Anthony discussed, this BlackBerry Silence software. The town is going to be very well protected. Of course, with anything in cybersecurity, there's never a foolproof system. Our process is to mitigate the risk as much as we can. And first thing we always want to do is mitigate that risk on the user level with training. And that goes a long ways, not only on an organizational level, but also on a personal level. And that's one of the things that we've seen that a lot of people get out of it is knowing the different attacks that happen on a personal level, because if they're paying attention to that, that also mitigates the organization as well. And to answer your question, sorry for a long-winded answer,
That's okay.
but you know, the town of Atherton in turn has a good firewall system, but we are at a line of end of life cycle, and this is the reason why we're upgrading. And that upgrade should be occurring in the next month. As we've already purchased it, we're just waiting for it to get shipped here and installed.
Okay, so you got the firewall covered, but there are the people that are in the town, and there are people like ourselves that are outside of town that could introduce a virus into the town through our email system. So have you and George discussed that, and whether or not we should have some additional security on our PCs that we're using to access the town, or what?
Yes, we have that, and I apologize, I should have mentioned it earlier. We have ESET antivirus and advanced protection that's running on all the computers, and anytime a computer gets infected, even if it's a malware, which is not a true virus, but it's just something that somebody downloads that's running on the background of your computer, we get alerted. And so that's running 24/7, and then it's on an alert system, and it gets updated automatically with the latest what we call definitions. So if there's a new virus that gets, or a malware that gets introduced somewhere part of the country, ESET recognizes it, they add it to their definition list, and then anything that gets introduced inside the organization, it's looking out for that. The second part of that also is email spam filtering. That's also being done at the email set level. So in case something does occur where an email attachment comes through, it detects it and also lets us know that, hey, there is a spam, there is a virus that came through the email system, and we mitigate that as well.
So when emails go through the server, that may be going to a computer outside of the clustered group of the town. You've caught those things at the server before they come to our individual systems.
That is correct. The town has
what I hear you
Office 365.
Okay.
Yeah, correct. The town has Office 365. So anything that comes inside that environment, it gets mitigated on Microsoft servers before it hits our environment.
Okay, thank you.
So resident Polito has his hand up. So, and then I think city manager would like to ask a question or make a comment. Bob?
I knew very little about cybersecurity until about a month ago. I serve on as a trustee of a trust that owns a company in Wisconsin, of which I'm also on the board. It's about a $350 million company with an IT department that has about 12 people. In the last couple of years, we've spent well over 6 figures just on cybersecurity issues. And approximately a month ago, everybody showed up to work at 4 a.m. to start picking orders, of which we pick several, well over 1,000 a day, and nothing happened. So to make a long story short, a well-known Russian hacking operation had shut down our entire system and shut down our entire backup system. They wanted a ransom. We had cybersecurity software. And so basically the insurance company took over because they're going to pay the $1. And they bring in lots of experts. They bring in negotiators. They bring in IT, cybersecurity experts. I mean, it was a cast of thousands. The most interesting fact out of this, which is mind-boggling to me, the negotiating team handles approximately 150 of these negotiations a month. Out of that 150, roughly 9 out of 10 pay the ransom. The ransom will vary from as little as a few $1,000s to as much as millions. In our case, we paid $5 million. That was the amount of our policy, which leads me to believe these Russian guys are not only hacking our computers, but they're hacking these cyber insurance companies' computers too, to find out how much they can get. How they make money on that, by the way, I don't know. Our policy was $80,000 for the year. They paid out $5 million in ransom, and they paid out, they are still paying out to the limit of the policy, which is $2.5 million for ancillary costs, which includes all these experts I'm talking about. So biggest, obviously, the town of Atherton, if they ask for ransom and they shut us down, they steal some stuff. The key is the backup.
Mhm.
And in the old, my first job out of college was IBM. In those days, you backed it up onto a tape. You took the tape out of the tape machine and it sat on a shelf over there, and it didn't get used again for 7 more days. I mean, this was ironclad backup as of the close of business the day before. Now these backup systems are much more sophisticated, and they tend to be linked continuously to your system. So far, the forensic IT people have figured out that these Russians were in our systems for almost 2 weeks before they shut us down, because they want to know everything they can about what they can and can't do. So, among other things, they got all our personnel records. That was off of a totally different file, kind of sitting in a computer over here. So now, we've got Experian in there providing protection to every, 350 employees, vendors, me, there's a lot of data there. So the key is the backup. And despite all the money we spent, and despite the expertise of what I think is a fairly good, solid team, although there will be more discussions about that, the backup was not adequate. And so by far, for a little place like ours, where the number of transactions daily and the cost of the hack, the size of the attack is limited, I would say it is worth spending some time with our IT people to make sure that the backup is truly segregated from the system. Literally, you pull the plug at the end when you're done backing up, and you don't hook it back up again until it's time to back up the next time. It could be that simple. I'm not up to date obviously on how it's done now, but so I thought all this was worth mentioning.
Thank you, Bob, for sharing that horrible experience. Oh my gosh, that is real time and really scary stuff. And you're right, backup. And we do that at our company all the time. George, you had a question.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Before I go into that question, though, just 2 things. One is, Bob, I do remember pulling those tapes as well, actually taking one of those tapes, taking it off site and putting it into somebody's, safe at home, fireproof safe or something, just to make sure that that was the biggest threat. Oh my gosh, the building will burn down. Then what do we do? Now it's totally different. But maybe before I launch into my comments, Madam Mayor, Mohammed can talk a little bit about how the town does do its backup systems.
Okay. Mohammed?
Thank you, George. Yep, thank you, George. So our backups are through a system called Barracuda Backup Appliance that we use. The backups are done not only on premise, on an appliance that's on the network, but then also it's offloaded to a secure cloud with Barracuda. In case of disaster, or an attack, if that appliance were to go down, we can go to Barracuda and actually offload all those backups on back into the network.
Can you give them the frequency of that, Mohammed?
Yeah, it's so the backup is running continuously every single day. We have a monthly backup, a weekly backup, a daily backup that happens, and we keep the records for 3 months.
And just, if I could jump in one more time, Mohammed, can you talk about how we use our network segmentation or subnets to also help kind of address the question that Councilmember had?
Yeah, one of the things we've done, since we are a public safety agency as well, we separated 2 of the networks. So the town actually has 2 separate networks. They have a town network and a PD network. The PD network can see the town network, but the town network cannot see the PD network. In turn, if there was an attack that happened inside the town network, it would, you know, as long as PD it happens, and it's not something that will kind of get penetrated into the PD network. Of course, if something happens inside the PD, it can get to the town. But we segregate the network from public safety aspect of it. So from a Colette's DOJ side of it, we are in compliance with that. And one of the other things we try to do is segment the network out for network traffic. So there's intrusion detection that's happening also when there is something that's high bandwidth or volatile bandwidth that happens in the network, we get alerted if there's something that happens inside the switches or firewalls as well.
Okay, so my comments that I had, Madam Mayor, was the Plan JPA, who is our risk pool for general liability. We do have the opportunity for cyber insurance coverage through them, and they're actually investigating higher levels of cyber insurance the more complicated these things evolve, like Bob's experience. So that does come at a cost, and that's evaluated through the JPA. The second thing I wanted to mention is the weakest link in all of this is everybody on the phone right now. The scraping of emails from websites, the phishing emails, the ransomware situations usually hinge on somebody clicking on something in an email that they got as they seek to find out more, or hey, click here, or I need a gift card. Could you go purchase them for me? Click on this link as to where I want to go. That sort of stuff is where the weakest link is, and it's all of us in the room. So the training on how to manage those, really paying attention to where that email is coming from, not just the name that shows up in your email address, because they can spoof that, but actually look at what the actual email address is. If it's not, if it's groderick's@ci.atherton instead of Atherton, it's that specific. It can change, and that's where the weakest links are. So we need to be aware of those things. And we get training at the staff level as well. But I get emails from each of you sometimes asking for gift cards or to go out and buy something, which I know doesn't come from you. So that's important.
That came from me. I was.
So that's all I have.
You really wanted that gift card, didn't you, Bill? Oh, Bob, I am so sorry that happened to you. Oh, I see Councilmember DeGolia's hand raised in a black box.
In a black box.
Yeah, you're not
Can't
there.
see you.
Oh,
You
sorry.
can't- Here you are.
So one piece of advice for everyone is, for every email that you get, look at who it's being sent from, not the name, but what the email address is, because all of us, if we're getting an email from one another and that email address doesn't include the sender's name in it, then it's probably a problem. I recently had this experience from Peninsula Clean Energy, where I didn't click on a email or a link, but there's a large number of people on the board. There's 23 board members, and plus staff, there's about 40 people that a board meeting date email goes out to, and somebody took my email address and then sent an email to everyone else from that. I don't exactly know how they got it. Obviously, that's being researched, but they took it, and their email address purported to be my name, but it wasn't an email address that included my name in it. So it obviously was a phisher who sent it. And to my knowledge, nobody clicked on the links that that person sent out, but it essentially is exactly what's been talked about here. And I think it's critical to look at who the sender is if you get an email from one of us, to make sure that our name is in that sender, in that sender email, because if it isn't, it's going to be a problem.
If I could add one point, Mayor, before you go to Mr. Polito. So if you notice now, you have that red and highlighted yellow bar at the top of all of your emails. That was a suggestion from Mohammed last year to help detect some of those outside emails as they're coming into your inbox. So it'll often say, hey, this email is from an external source, don't open, don't click attachments. And unfortunately now it probably is routine and you kind of like skip, I know, but it still is there to serve as kind of like that bold-faced reminder that this is an email outside of our network.
Okay, Mr. Polito, one parting.
Yeah, just briefly. I mean, some of the comments you made are, you're talking about phishing and those kind of things. This threat is an intrusion, and intrusions occur, as Mohammed can speak to, when they gain access to the network. And that term is what makes me nervous when we talk about backups. Once they get the credential they need to enter the network, and believe me, we had all those malware packages, all the packages that supposedly identify people in the system, activities in the system that are awry. Once these guys get in, they are really good. And so when you just what you said, Mohammed, the backups on the network and the PD, and they're separate networks, but I know they're all connected by a wire. It has nothing to do with phishing. They're very skilled. And so I would go back to my main point. I hope that you're back up to the cloud, but I have a feeling they can get into the cloud too and encrypt that stuff. I have no idea how far this could go, but these insurance companies and the people they employ do. Maybe I can get more information as this goes on. Like I said, the forensic people are still going.
Okay. Oh, it's a scary world out there. So Mohammed and Anthony, thank you for this report and all the work that you're doing to keep us safe, and hope you can take some of these recommendations from real life experiences from a resident and other people, and make sure that we're backed up. So Councilmember Widmer, hi.
Hi. Mohammed, I don't know if you've thought about this. You know, I've worked for networking companies. Traditionally, what we've done to secure the network is it's a token-based system that the token changes every second or every minute, and that becomes part of your login. And I don't know if we've considered that for here, but you know, when you're supporting, you know, people in 220 different countries, it seemed to have done the trick. So there's lots of solutions, but again, this is one of the things we even brought that up. It's us that have to do it. So, but we have to be careful with what's coming into our systems, and we have to be careful with what we're sending in. So, you know, I think that perhaps it might be more that we can do. I shared Bob's concern. By the way, I also did tapes and carried off DASD packs and things like that. But you know, perhaps what we should do is get a copy of it, you know, on some sort of hard drive that we would then isolate and turn that over on at least a monthly basis, so that we got this ransomware system, because our systems are essentially open because we're, you know, a public entity. And some public entities have been, hijacked. So we would be able to restore and get back to everything almost right away. So just a suggestion to you. Thanks.
Councilmember Redburn, if I may, yes, we are actually putting in two-factor authentication in the coming months as well, as we're moving over to more cloud services. So the two-factor authentication will be applied to all staff at the town. So that means that anytime they log in, they will either get a text message with the code, or they would get they would have to open a authentication app to get the code and put that in as they log in. So that is another deterrent that we're applying in here in the next coming month as well.
Well, what about having a secure server that we would back up onto, that after we ran the backup, maybe we run weekly backups. So then we have at least, the maximum we lose would be 7 days, and then we disconnect it after we do the backup. I realize you said you're backing up on a daily basis. That's great. But we would lose only 1 week if we had a dedicated backup, which would then be disconnected.
Okay.
Yes, I think you make a good point. We'll look at those options and come back to you.
All right, thanks. Appreciate it.
All right. Any other comments from anyone before we close out this meeting? Very interesting and a lot of good information. If no one has anything else to say, we'll call for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Thank you all.
All right,
Happy
thanks.
Cinco de Mayo. Where's our margaritas? Where's our sombreros?
Coming right
Yeah.
now.
Where are the mariachis?
Well, it looks like it's Bob's got the wine out. I can
No,
see
this
that
is-
right behind him.
This is ice water, but margaritas are coming right now.
I'll
I'll
be
be
over.
I think you need a few of them. Honestly, what you've been through. Oh my God. Oh, I'm so sorry. That's terrible. Okay. Yeah.
Bye.